A young girl disappeared without a trace from the town of Asheri. Her bucket, a simple blue bucket she used for household chores, was found floating on the waters of Odo Oro, the most feared river in all the land. But her body? It was never discovered. For months, her family searched. They contacted every relative. They appealed to neighbors. They even enlisted the help of their king, who sent search parties across the entire region. Nothing. It was as if she had been swallowed by the earth itself. But then, something far more disturbing began to happen. Every time someone touched the water of Odo Oro, just a finger grazing the surface, they heard her voice. A woman's voice, singing from somewhere deep beneath the water. The song was haunting, beautiful, and utterly impossible, because no one could see her. No body floated to the surface, no figure appeared in the depths, just the voice. Always the same song, always when the water was touched. This is the story of Abike, the girl who defied one warning too many. What happened to her didn't just change her life, it transformed her into something else entirely. And the truth? It's more chilling than you could imagine. But to understand how she ended up singing from the bottom of a forbidden river, we need to go back to when Abike was born, back to a family that wanted nothing more than a daughter to complete their happiness. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand this story, you first need to understand the world in which it takes place. This was long ago. How long? Nobody knows for certain, but it was a time when the supernatural and the natural world existed side by side, when rivers had goddesses and spirits walked among mortals. The village of Asheri was like many villages in this region. Farmers worked the land, families lived in close-knit communities, the king made decisions that affected everyone's lives, and the people respected traditions that had been passed down for generations. But Asheri had something that set it apart: Odo Oro. Odo Oro wasn't just any river, it was the largest, the most beautiful, and by far the most feared body of water in the entire region. The river's name itself meant something. Odo Oro can be translated as River of Gold or Precious River, and it lived up to that name. The water was crystal clear, so clear you could see every pebble on the riverbed. The surroundings were breathtaking: tall palm trees that swayed in the breeze, coconut trees heavy with fruit, elegant pine trees, and beds of flowers that created a kaleidoscope of colors. But beauty can be deceptive, and Odo Oro held secrets that most people were too afraid to discover. You see, the river was considered sacred, mysterious. On certain days of the week, days that everyone knew but nobody spoke about openly, water spirits called orisas were said to emerge from the depths. They came to honor Oluwari, the overall goddess of the river, and they brought fairies with them, mystical creatures that danced and sang in the twilight. Now, you might be thinking, water spirits? Goddesses? This is just folklore, right? But in Asheri, nobody questioned whether these beings existed. The question was, how do you avoid them? Because there was one rule everyone knew. If you went to Odo Oro during one of these ceremonies, if you saw the water spirits in Oluwari with your own eyes, you would not return. Not alive, anyway. The only exception was the chief priest, a man who had special knowledge and special protections that allowed him to interact with these supernatural beings without harm. Everyone else stayed away. Or at least they were supposed to.
But here's what made Odo Oro so complicated. The river wasn't just dangerous, it was also healing. During the safe hours, during the daylight, when the ceremonies weren't taking place, Odo Oro had therapeutic properties. People who were brave enough to visit during these times found that the water worked wonders for their health. Aches and pains disappeared after a swim, skin conditions cleared up, even mental exhaustion seemed to lift in the peaceful surroundings. The peaceful and beautiful environment, combined with the pure, clean water, created a place of restoration and renewal. It was, quite literally, a healing sanctuary. But, and this is crucial, most people in Ishedi preferred the steer clear of the river at all times. The association with Oluwari and the water spirits was too strong. The fear was too deep. Why risk it, they reasoned, when there were other rivers nearby? So Odo Oro remained largely deserted, visited only by the occasional brave soul who needed its healing properties desperately enough to overcome their fear. And by the chief priest, of course, who alone understood how to navigate its dangers. This was the world Abike was born into. A world of rules, a world of boundaries, a world where certain places were forbidden for very good reasons. But Abike, she was never very good with rules. Let me introduce you Abike's parents, Jagun and Korewa. They were what you might call the backbone of their community, honest, hard-working people who took pride in doing things the right way. Jagun was a farmer. Not just any farmer, but one of the most successful in Ishedi. He knew the land intimately, when to plant, when to harvest, how to read the weather. His crops were abundant, his livestock healthy. The family never went hungry. Korewa managed the household with equal skill. She cooked, cleaned, managed supplies, and made sure everything ran smoothly. She was known in the community as a woman of good sense and warm heart. And they had 2 sons, Olu and Ide. These boys were the kind of children every parent dreams of. They helped their father in the fields without complaint. They assisted their mother with chores whenever they could. They were obedient, respectful, and hard-working. Chips off the old block, as we might say. But Korewa felt something was missing. "How I wish we had a daughter as well," she would say to her husband, often late at night when the day's work was done and they lay in bed talking. Jagun would tease her. "Someone to help you with your chores, no doubt." "Oh, no, that's not the reason," Korewa would protest. Though, if we're being honest, having a daughter would indeed mean more help around the house. In their culture, daughters learned their mother's skills and contributed to the household in ways that complemented what sons did. But that wasn't really why Korewa wanted a daughter. She wanted the relationship, the bond, the particular kind of love between mother and daughter. Months turned to years. Korewa got older. The likelihood of having another child seemed to diminish with each passing season. And then, as if by miracle, or perhaps by the intervention of forces we don't fully understand, she became pregnant. The couple was overjoyed, but more than that, they were grateful. This felt like a gift from the universe, from their ancestors, from whatever powers govern such things. If our wish is granted, and it's a girl, we'll take very good care of her. We'll make sure she has everything she needs and wants. After all, why am I working so hard at the farm and doing well? This child is the answer to our prayers. And when Korewa gave birth, their wish was granted. A girl, a beautiful baby girl with bright eyes and strong lungs. They named her Abike. "This is wonderful! We have a daughter at last," husband and wife kept saying, unable to believe their luck. They would look at her sleeping in her crib and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. But here's where our story takes its first fateful turn, because that gratitude, that joy, that sense of having received a precious gift after waiting so long, it affected how they raised her, and not necessarily for the better. What Jagun and Korewa were about to do, how they chose to raise their miracle daughter, would set in motion a chain of events that would eventually lead to tragedy, because sometimes love without boundaries can be just as dangerous as no love at all. But first, we need to talk about what kind of child Abike became. And let me tell you, she was unlike any child her parents had raised before. Abike's parents gave her everything she needed and wanted. And I mean everything. Wanted a particular type of food? She got it. Wanted to skip a chore? No problem. Wanted to stay up past bedtime? Well, just this once. She was allowed to do whatever she liked. She was made to feel special. Not just loved, special, different, exempt from the normal rules that governed her brothers' lives. It was not surprising, therefore, that Abike grew up into a willful, self-centered, and stubborn girl. Her brothers noticed it first. "Father and mother have spoiled Abike rotten," Olu complained to his brother one day. This was after Abike did something their mother specifically asked her not to do and faced no consequences. "She's so disobedient," he continued. "No matter what you say, she won't listen. She's very stubborn." Ide nodded. "She's not only disobedient and stubborn, she's also too inquisitive, daring, bold, and brash." The two brothers were right. They'd identified character traits that, in the right context, could be admirable. Curiosity is good, boldness can be valuable, daring can lead to great achievements, but without wisdom, without respect for boundaries, these same traits become dangerous. As Abike grew older, she began hearing stories about Odo Oro. Everyone in town knew about the river, but people spoke about it in hushed tones, especially around children. But Abike, being Abike, didn't just listen to these stories passively. She interrogated every adult who mentioned the river. "Who are these water spirits? What do they look like? Do they look like us? How do they honor Oluweri? I hear they're fairies as well. How wonderful. Surely fairies wouldn't harm anyone. They're supposed to be good, right? Why is Odo Oro forbidden? What exactly happens there? Has anyone actually seen these spirits?" Question after question after question. Her parents tried to answer, but the truth was, they didn't have complete answers. No one did.
You see, that's the thing about Odo Oro. It existed in that space between knowledge and mystery. Everyone knew it was dangerous. Everyone knew about the ceremonies, but the exact details? Those were unclear. And unclear things, forbidden things, have a particular power over curious minds. Abike had never been to Odo Oro herself, but she knew exactly where it was. Every child in town knew. It was like growing up near a famous haunted house. You knew where it was, even if you'd never gone inside. And her curiosity about the river grew. Not just curiosity, fascination, obsession even. She was fascinated by the mysteries surrounding it. She was fascinated by the stories of water spirits and goddesses. But most of all, she was fascinated by the fact that it was forbidden. Because here's a truth about human nature, especially about children and young people. Tell us something is off limits, and suddenly, that's all we can think about. When Abike's questions became particularly persistent, her mother decided to tell her a story. A specific story that she hoped would convince her daughter to stay away from Odo Oro. "I'll tell you another story about Odo Oro," Kurewa said, settling down with her daughter. "Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but perhaps it will help you understand why you must never go there. It is said," she continued, "that the goddess of the river, Olumeri, had several children, beautiful children whom she loved deeply, but she lost them, one by one, mysteriously." "Lost them how?" Abike asked. "That's the mystery. It's said they were given away, or perhaps taken, to couples who could not have children of their own. How this happened, nobody knows. These were supernatural beings, after all. The normal rules of the world don't apply to them." Kurewa paused, making sure her daughter was listening. Oluweri was devastated each time she lost a child, but she had one daughter left, her last daughter, a girl named Nma. Beautiful Nma, and Oluweri believed, or perhaps hoped, that Nma would come back to her. "How would Nma come back?" Abike asked, completely absorbed now. "That's the strange part. It's said that if Nma were to come to the river, if she were to fetch water from Odo Oro or do her laundry there, then Oluweri would recognize her daughter and be reunited with her. Nma would be transformed back into a water spirit and would return to her mother in the depths of the river. But," Kurewa added quickly, "this could only happen if Nma hadn't married by then and didn't have a child of her own. If she had a family, the spell, or whatever it was, would be broken." But instead of frightening Abike away from the river, the story had the opposite effect. Now Odo Oro wasn't just forbidden, it was mysterious, magical, connected to this supernatural mother-daughter story. Abike's curiosity grew even stronger. And that's the danger of certain kinds of warnings, isn't it? Sometimes when you tell a story meant to frighten, you accidentally make something more intriguing. You give it a narrative.
You make it romantic. Kurewa had hoped to protect her daughter. Instead, she'd fed her daughter's fascination. The pieces were now in place. A curious, disobedient girl, a forbidden river with mysterious powers, and a story that made that river seem not just dangerous, but irresistible. The only question was, when would Abike act on her fascination, and what would trigger her to finally defy her parents' most important warning? That moment came sooner than anyone expected. The morning started like any other morning in Jagoon and Kurewa's household, but sometimes the most significant days of our lives begin ordinarily. We don't wake up knowing that everything is about to change. Jagoon was usually the first to leave the house. He was an early riser, a man who believed in getting to work before the sun grew too hot. He'd eat a hearty breakfast. Kurewa always made sure he had plenty of food to fuel a long day in the fields, and then he'd be off. But this particular morning, he lingered. He was talking to his wife, and his voice carried through the house in a way that made Abike, who was just waking up, pause and listen. "I want to go quickly to Odo Oro on my way to the farm," Jagoon was saying. Abike's ears perked up immediately. Her father was going to Odo Oro? Right now? During the day? For a swim? And he wasn't afraid? "I need a swim. My body's aching. The boys can go ahead to the farm." Kurewa's response came clearly. "You're lucky you've got the time. My body's aching as well, but I need to wash a lot of clothes and fetch water for bathing." And then Kurewa said something that would change everything. "Whilst we're at it, I'm actually getting tired of fetching water for the whole house. Perhaps Abike should start helping out." Abike, hidden from view but listening intently, felt a mix of emotions. Part of her was annoyed. Another chore? Part of her was pleased. Her parents were acknowledging she was old enough for more responsibility. But mostly, her mind latched onto one crucial piece of information. Her father was going to Odo Oro, right now, during the day, for a swim? And he wasn't afraid. Jagoon agreed with his wife. "That's a good idea. I've been thinking that Abike is old enough to do more work than she's doing. We'll discuss it tonight." And with that, he left for Odo Oro and then the farm.
Now let me pause here and explain something about Abike's chores up to this point. Her brothers helped with outdoor work, fetching water, washing clothes at the river, heavy lifting. Abike's chores were all indoor, tidying rooms, sweeping, helping with food preparation. This division wasn't meant to be unfair. Her parents thought outdoor chores would be too much for her. Remember, this was their miracle daughter, the one they'd waited so long for. They wanted to protect her. But the effect was that Abike had never been to the rivers where water was fetched. She'd never done laundry at the riverside. These outdoor practical tasks were foreign to her. And now, her mother was suggesting she start, on the very same day her father mentioned going to Odo Oro. In Abike's mind, connections were forming. Dangerous connections. Later that day, after her father and brothers had left, Abike went about her usual chores. Her mother called out, "Tidy the house and make sure you sweep all the rooms in the corridor and do the rest of your chores. I'm going to wash clothes at the river and then fetch water for bathing." "All right, Mother, bye," Abike answered, her voice neutral, giving nothing away. But inside her mind, thoughts were whirling like leaves in a storm. "How I'd love to go to Odo Oro," she thought as she began sweeping. "What does the water look like there? Father said it helps with body aches. It must have special properties. I wonder what it would be like to swim there." She swept mechanically, her hands moving while her mind was elsewhere. Why don't the water spirits choose other rivers for their ceremony? What makes Odo Oro so special? Why is Oluwari called Oluwari anyway? What does her name mean? She sat down to eat her morning meal. The food was good. Her mother was an excellent cook, but Abike barely tasted it. Her mind was consumed with Odo Oro. After eating, she rested, letting her food digest. This was the custom. But even in rest, her thoughts gave her no peace.
But it's not as if one can't go there at all, she reasoned to herself. After all, hasn't Father just said to Mother that he was going there this morning to swim? He goes there once in a while, he's never been harmed. If it was safe for him, why not for her? From what I hear, it's only at certain times that these water spirits come out to honor Oluwari. It's not all the time. Why are people so afraid? Well, I'm not. She resumed her chores, sweeping the corridor now, but her mind had already made a decision. Why don't I just go there now? She thought. I don't know exactly which days the ceremony takes place, but it doesn't matter since it takes place in the evening and I'm not going to be there in the evening. As long as it's daylight, it'll be all right. But this logic had a fatal flaw. Abike didn't actually know when the ceremonies took place. She was making assumptions based on fragments of information. She was filling in gaps with what she wanted to be true, rather than what was actually true. Surely there's no harm in that, she continued in her own mind. I won't stay that long, certainly not until evening. As for being mistaken for Nima or Nima herself, that's ridiculous. And then the final rationalization, the story she would tell if questioned. I can always say that I overheard the conversation between Father and Mother this morning about helping with fetching water and wanted to surprise Mother that I'm up to the task, not even by going to the nearby river where she usually goes, but to Odo Oro, the biggest river of all. I can say that I thought the water at Odo Oro was cleaner and nicer than at the nearby river. Above all, by going to Odo Oro without danger, I'll be able to prove to everyone that that river is not a no-go area during the day. Do you see what happened there? She'd constructed an entire narrative in which she was the hero. She wasn't being disobedient, she was being helpful. She wasn't being reckless, she was being brave. She was going to prove everyone's fears were unfounded. This is how we justify our worst decisions, isn't it? We tell ourselves stories in which we're the protagonist doing something noble rather than admitting we're simply giving in to dangerous impulses. That was how Abike built up a case in her mind to justify going to the river that was forbidden to her. That was how Abike picked up a blue bucket, the same bucket that would later be found floating on the water, and headed for the front door.
The walk to Odo Oro took about 20 minutes from Abike's home. Abike walked with purpose, the bucket swinging from her hand. With each step, her excitement grew. She was actually doing it. She was going to Odo Oro. As she got closer, she could hear the river before she could see it. The sound of water flowing, gentle and inviting, not threatening at all. See? Everything was fine. And then she arrived. When Abike first laid eyes on Odo Oro, she was absolutely stunned. Everything people had said about its beauty, it was an understatement. There were clusters of tall, elegant palm trees swaying in the breeze, coconut trees heavy with fruit, pine trees that seemed to touch the sky. All around, the leaves moved in a gentle dance against a brilliant blue sky. At the feet of these trees, green grass spread like a carpet. Beds of pine needles created soft cushions. Flowers in every color imaginable, reds, yellows, purples, oranges, created an array of dazzling colors. Abike gazed around her in rapture. The water itself was mesmerizing, crystal clear, flowing and ebbing gently, catching the sunlight and throwing it back in 1,000 sparkles. There was whispering in the trees caused by the gentle breeze. Birds chirped their afternoon songs. The sound of the water provided a constant, soothing backdrop. Together, these sounds made Odo Oro truly enchanting, mystical, like something from a dream. Abike had never seen anything like this before, never experienced such natural beauty, such peace. She sat down on the green grass, close to the river's edge, with thoughts of fetching water far removed from her mind. The bucket lay forgotten beside her. She didn't even think she was wrong in coming here. The thought didn't cross her mind. Wrong in disobeying her parents? No. All she could think was, how could anyone fear such a place? She just gazed and gazed in wonder at her surroundings, marveling at their beauty. It was so calm, so peaceful, and not a single person in sight. Pity everyone is so afraid of coming here, she thought. But I'm not. I'm not even afraid that I'm the only one here. Nothing can frighten me. And here's the truly dangerous thought that formed in her mind. I'll just have to make my parents understand how I feel about this river. I'm lucky they always come around in the end, even when I do what they ask me not to do. Do you hear that? She was already assuming she'd face no real consequences, because she never had before. Why would this time be different? How can there be water spirits and Oluwari, their goddess, at a place like this? Even if they exist, they won't come out now. These were the thoughts going through Abike's mind. She felt so good, so peaceful and happy. The warm sun, the gentle breeze, the beautiful surroundings. It was like being in paradise. And after a while, inevitably, her eyes grew heavy. She started to doze off. And before she realized what was happening, she had fallen into a deep, deep sleep.
Abike had made a fatal miscalculation, one that would cost her everything. Because when she woke, the sun would be gone, the peace would be shattered, and she would come face to face with beings that humans were never meant to see. What happened next would haunt her family for months and change Abike herself forever. Abike was woken up by strange sounds. What was that? She asked herself, jerking awake, and then the horror set in as she realized where she was and looked at the sky. Night was falling. Not just approaching, falling. The sky had turned from brilliant blue to deep purple and orange. The sun was nearly gone. Shadows stretched long across the grass. How could I have slept that long? She wondered, scrambling to her feet, suddenly scared. What time is it? How long have I been here? Her peaceful afternoon had somehow turned into hours. Time had slipped away while she slept, lulled by the beauty and tranquility of Odo Oro. I better just run home, she thought, panic rising in her chest. Supposing the stories about the water spirits in Oluwari are true after all, and they're coming out today of all days. This wasn't part of the plan. The plan was visit during the day, explore a bit, fetch some water, go home triumphant, prove everyone wrong. Falling asleep and finding herself there as night fell, that was not part of the plan. The strange sounds became louder and louder still, and very soon she realized what she was hearing. Voices, but not human voices. These were higher, more musical, more ethereal. Fairies. She could hear them approaching, and she could tell from the sound that there were many of them. Abike relaxed slightly, just slightly. She had heard of fairies but had never seen them before, only pictures of them in the stories her mother told, and surely fairies would not cause her any harm. Fairies are not wicked, she reasoned, trying to calm her racing heart. They're there to help people. Perhaps they've come to help me get away from here. But as the fairies got nearer and nearer, her relief began to fade, because they didn't just approach, they surrounded her. They were blocking her way, many of them, forming a circle around her. Abike could see them now in the fading light. They were beautiful, yes, but also strange, otherworldly. Their features were too perfect, their movements too fluid. They glowed faintly, as if lit from within. She became very scared. And then, in her fear, she did something instinctive. She started to sing. The song that came out was about Nama, the story her mother had told her. Perhaps, she thought, if Oluwari were nearby, the song would appeal to her maternal instincts. Perhaps it would bring about a reversal of circumstances. Abike had a beautiful voice. Everyone said so. And now she sang as she had never sung before, pouring all her fear and hope into the words. As she sang, tears streamed down her face. She trembled with fear. But something unexpected happened. The fairies began to enjoy her song. They started swaying, then dancing around her, their movements graceful and hypnotic.
They weren't threatening her. They were appreciating her? You see, the fairies always came out on the occasion of Oluwari's ceremony. Before the ceremony began, they were, in a sense, the heralds of what was to come. And they had a particular habit. They liked to warn anyone they saw around whom they found sympathetic. They only warned people they liked. And they liked Abike. They liked her song. They liked her beauty. They liked something essential about her spirit, despite her foolishness in coming here. One of the fairies spoke. Her voice was like wind chimes. "You've got to get away immediately. God help you if you don't. The 3 water spirits in Oluwari must not find you here." The other fairies nodded in agreement, their expressions serious now. And then they began revealing something that explained why the water spirits were so dangerous. "One of the water spirits is blind," said one fairy. "The second is deaf," said another. "The third is disabled," said a third. Abike listened, confused at first. Why did this matter? But the fairies continued. "They don't want anyone to know this, you see. These are their secrets, their vulnerabilities, and they take certain steps to ensure their secrets remain hidden." The implication was clear, even if the words weren't spoken directly. They eliminate anyone who sees them, anyone who discovers their weaknesses. Abike grew more alarmed. So there really are water spirits here after all, and they're coming now? The fairies sensed her panic and stepped back, getting out of her way. They waved goodbye to her, their warning delivered. Abike rushed off, trying to find her way back in the growing darkness, but she couldn't. The paths that seemed so clear in daylight were now confusing. Everything looked different. The darkness was enveloping her surroundings, swallowing familiar landmarks. She ran in what she thought was the right direction, then stopped, uncertain. She turned another way, then stopped again. Lost. Completely lost. And then it happened.
Suddenly, the 3 water spirits in Oluwari emerged from the water. They rose from the depths in a cascade of water and light, resplendent in shimmering outfits that seemed to be made of water itself, catching every bit of remaining light and reflecting it back. Oluwari outshone them all. She was magnificent, terrible, beautiful beyond description. Abike could see them clearly despite the increasing darkness around her. They seemed to generate their own light, and they were coming toward her. Nearer and nearer, and then a strange thing happened. "I can't see! I can't see!" Abike cried out in horror. Suddenly, without warning, she had gone blind. Everything around her, the water spirits, the river, the trees, all vanished into complete darkness. She started singing again, desperately, thinking perhaps her song could save her. But then another strange thing happened. "Oh my God, I can't move!" Abike was paralyzed. Her legs refused to obey her commands. She couldn't run. She couldn't even take a single step. She was frozen in place like a statue. She started to cry, petrified, not knowing what to do. Tears streamed down her face. She could feel them, even if she couldn't see. And then she noticed something else, or rather, she noticed the absence of something. The sound of birds in the trees, gone. The sound of crickets that she'd been hearing since nightfall, gone. She strained her ears, listening desperately for any sound at all. Nothing. Complete silence. She had gone deaf. Blind, paralyzed, deaf. The 3 water spirits had inflicted their own disabilities upon her. She had seen them, seen their vulnerabilities, and now she was paying the price. By now, the 3 water spirits were upon her with outstretched hands. Abike could not see them, but she felt their presence. The air around her changed, grew colder, thicker. "What are they going to do to me?" she wondered, her heart beating so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. And then she felt hands on her throat. "Are they going to strangle me?" She remembered the fairy's warning, and she knew, this is what happens to people who come here at the wrong time. This is why they never return. The hands tightened. She couldn't scream. Her voice was frozen in her throat. She couldn't fight. Her body wouldn't move. She couldn't even see her attackers.
This was the end. This was how Abike would die, blind, deaf, paralyzed, and strangled by water spirits at a forbidden river. But the fairies were still nearby, and they were not going to let this happen. The fairies had been observing everything that was happening from the edge of the woods, and they felt sorry for Abike. They liked her. They liked her singing, her beauty. Something about her spirit spoke to them. And they also hoped that maybe this was a case of Abike being in the wrong place at the wrong time through simple ignorance. Perhaps the poor girl knew nothing about the dangers involved in coming here, one of the fairies said to the others. Perhaps she had not been warned by her parents about the water spirits in Oluwari. She's probably only trying to help her parents in coming to fetch water here. Look, she even brought a bucket. It was a generous interpretation. The truth was more complicated. Abike had been warned. She had known it was forbidden. She had chosen to come anyway. But the fairies wanted to believe the best. As the water spirits were about to strangle Abike, one of the fairies rushed quickly forward.
"Don't kill her," she ordered, her voice commanding despite its musical quality. "Listen to her song. Isn't it beautiful? And her voice, magnificent. She's beautiful as well. She's too beautiful to be strangled and thrown into the river." The three water spirits halted what they were about to do. They were taken aback by the fairy's words, by her intervention. Fairies didn't usually interfere. The fairy went on quickly, sensing an opportunity. "Why don't you turn her into a water spirit, into the river goddess's daughter? After all, she does look like Ma, Oluwari's beautiful daughter, whom Oluwari longs to be reunited with. She can sing for her whenever Oluwari wants. She'll be useful at her ceremony as well. She'll add splendor to the occasion." It was brilliant. The fairy had remembered the story, the legend of Ma that everyone knew, and she was using it to save Abike's life. This suggestion seemed to delight Oluwari. A smile spread across her luminous face. "Yes, yes, she can be my daughter," Oluwari answered, her voice echoing strangely. "After all, Ma still hasn't come back to me, and she can sing to me and honor my ceremony." "A daughter," she chuckled, a sound like water over stones. "It would be such a waste to have someone who looks very much like Ma and sings as beautifully as this girl killed." Oluwari had magical powers that enabled her to turn ordinary mortals into water spirits like herself. These were powers no one else possessed, not the other water spirits, not the fairies. And so, right there, with a gesture and words spoken in a language Abike couldn't understand even if she could hear, the transformation began. Abike felt strange sensations throughout her body, like water flowing through her veins, like her very substance was changing. And then suddenly, her sight returned, her hearing returned, her ability to move returned. But she was no longer human. She was a water spirit, the river goddess's daughter. The fairies walked back into the woods, happy that Abike had not been killed. They had done what they could. Her life was saved. But at what cost? While Abike was being transformed into something no longer human, her family was beginning to worry. They had no idea where she was. They had no idea what had happened. But they were about to start a search that would consume them for days and lead them, eventually, to a truth more strange than they could have imagined.